is 10 tips in 10 minutes focused on the return of serve. I'm calling it rip your returns because clearly I'm addicted to alliteration. So number one, Justin, we're getting started. Your number one tip is strong, ready stance. Talk to me.
100%. If you haven't got a strong, ready stance, you're not ready for the ball. You're not ready for most things. Okay. And just some tips on a strong, ready stance is you really should have your head leaning forward versus standing up. You should also have the weight on the balls of your feet. You should also try and be relaxed until the ball's about to make contact and then engage. I see a lot of people very, very tight and very engaged. By the time the ball struck, the body and the muscles don't want to react. So there's a lot of things I could go over that ready stance that is so critical. But what's really important is to have a strong, I always talk to the kids, think about a sumo wrestler and think about, he's like ready to pounce into the ball, right? So just making sure you have a strong ready stance and you're not standing vertical is very critical. So
I'm looking forward to seeing a sumo wrestler playing tennis someday. Number two, big roll with the non-dominant hand.
Yes, so non-dominant hand, again, for a one-hander especially, is holding the weight in the middle of the racket so the right hand is loose and it's easier to react and respond. And then if you have to, grip change, okay? The non-dominant hand in a two-hander, we want to try to make sure if you're right-handed, your non-dominant hand is taking over on the return versus being too tight on the right hand, okay? So the right hand is too tight, it's really hard for the non-dominant hand to utilize on a two-handed return. So very important to be understanding of the non-dominant hand.
Number three, similar to that one, leads into grip tension.
Yeah, so grip tension, I put that in because it's separate for the reason that a lot of people, if they're making poor returns, I see it a lot where they're just too tight before the ball struck. And the tension goes up the body. So really there is no return, there is no unit turn. And then the hands can't dictate where the return's going purely because of grip tension. So grip tension, I put that separate than non-dominant hand for the reason that sometimes on the forehand, we're standing there and we're just too tight. All we got to do is stand there loose and react.
Yeah, and that's good because the first three are similar in that there's a theme. And it is to find that time to relax. That's fantastic.
Yep.
Number four, your outside foot for solid returns. Where are you going with that?
Yeah, if you watch the pros, they'll direct, if it's going to their backhand, let's say right hand, left hand, doesn't matter. If it's going to their left side of their body, they'll tend to put what we call the step down. The left foot turns outwards, so it actually fires the gluteus maximus and allows that compact return and bang, straight back. So if you practice every time it goes to your left foot, every time it goes to your right foot, I'm not saying that that's all you do, but that's where your driving force behind the return is. If you don't practice that, you're stepping in and you're actually really not getting that force behind the ball.
Got it. And quick definition for me, outside foot means it's facing the outside of the court in my mind. Do you simply mean the foot, if I'm going even toward the middle, I want the same foot in the same direction, stepping outside?
Yeah, I say outside foot because you're thinking about like leaning out and putting it out onto the outside leg, and then you drive forward.
Got it. Makes sense.
So I talk about outside foot, but you can say right foot, left foot, same thing.
Yep, I get it. Number five, the benefit of a slice return.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm an Aussie, but what I can say is Ash Barty dominated the sport because of her slice backhand return. And everyone can argue the fact as many times you want, but I've seen the statistics, and her slice return was absolute masterful because from a young age was taught with the non-dominant hand, taught to hit the slice when she needed, and then bring the two-handed in if she wanted to hit a two-hander. But it always started up here to get ready for a one-hander. So critical, again, non-dominant hand, by teaching straight away. If you teach this, you give the opportunity to learn a slice return as soon as possible. If not, you're always going to be a two-hander, and a two-handed slice.
We're at number six, right? Number six, elbows away from the body. This is why I write these things down. Elbows away from the body.
Yep. You brought up one with Leighton Hewitt. You know, he tends to be here, right? But you see a lot of players now, nice and relaxed, elbows drop, but elbows out away from the rib cage, so that they're learning to respond with their hands. Versus if the elbows are in, they tend to be too tight and taking too backswing. The other issue with the elbows I find down into the rib cage is people tend to get lazy and sit. I call it sitting on the toilet versus leaning forward and leaning into the ball because the elbows are out. So it can be a very good common tip to get your elbows out so you're leaning into the ball. It keeps your whole body weight going this way on the upper body versus sitting down straight.
Makes sense. Now, actually, number 7, racket centered at the start.
Yeah, so center to the start. Many I see players standing there with their racket like this, right? And they should have it centered so that they can respond backhand or forehand. And I see a lot of players sometimes like this, and they wonder why, you know, it's harder for them to get that backhand set up, ready to go. And, you know, so I always say try to make sure you're focusing on the racket centered because you're going to be a faster response. Which side?
Probably a similar tip at volleys as well, keeping that racket so you're being able to go one side or the other, right?
100%.
Yeah, makes sense. Number 8, your mental routine. You have marked target, toss, and contact specifically.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's got different routines. I mean, all the players will tell you they're different routines. They have different cues, but very similar are the cues. And the cues are for me that, you know, before the return, before the guy's dressing the serve, you should be broad vision picking a target, right? And the players do it all the time, right? So they first serve, second serve, they're already pre-picking what they're going to do and what they're going to set the point up off the return. So they're already picking their target. If it's 30 all, they may be thinking a percentage return. If it's love 40, they're thinking a more aggressive return. And the aggressive return doesn't necessarily mean power. An aggressive return could be the area of the court. So you know, or it could be aggressive because he's stepping in and he's putting more pressure on. So there's all these things, but picking a target is critical to making that count. Okay. It also helps because your hands are going in the direction you've already picked. So there's sometimes at the higher level or whatever level, your processing speed, if you've got a target, it makes it easier. You've already made the decision, right? You're not going to look off the ball either because you already know your target. So target's number 1. I go through the routine. Target, ball toss. Ball toss is because you're watching the ball and then you're watching them hit the ball. So you're instinctively seeing something earlier for you to be on the ball earlier. Okay. You start to also by watching the ball toss, get your engagement step, which some people do a split step and step up, and some people are just 2 feet on. But the engagement of that step ready to go has a lot to do with watching the ball toss as well. So there's some big advantages from target to toss. And then the biggest one is contact point. Like literally just keeping eyes, making the commitment, keeping eyes on contact. You don't need to look where you're going because everything's all set.
Watch the ball hit the racket. So many of us look up, just like the golfers, the amateur golfer that looks up before he hits the ball, right?
Yep. And if he's got the steady base, he's going to push off from the outside leg and go weight transfer. If he's not, he's going to stand up or he's going to look off. So these are all sort of setting your tone to giving you tips for return.
I like it. Number 9, return is not a ground stroke.
Yes. I don't know how many people take the big backswing on a return when actually there should be more compact and taking time away from their opponent. I mean, it's just so critical. Yes, I do see a lot of these younger players playing further back, but we are seeing them starting to push further up. And they do go up and back because they're trying to adjust the returns to make a more strategic position for them. But on the other hand, if they could be up on the ball, which is, you know, Djokovic is one of his biggest things. Agassi, one of his biggest things, is that he just took time away from him straight away because of the solid return. So you really should be focusing on compact return is not a ground stroke, because a ground stroke is a lot more bigger backswing. There's a lot more room, you know.
Biggest difference. No backswing on the return. I love it. Number 10, last but not least, happy hip stance. That's a fun phrase. Happy hip stance is a must. What do you mean?
Yeah, it's one of my favorites. That's why I put it at number 10, because I knew everybody would be like, what is going on? What is he talking about? But depending on the player, depending on the junior, depending on a 40-year-old, 50-year-old, 3-0, 3-5, it doesn't matter what level you are. If you put your feet together like this and just up and down, stancing with your feet, jump up in the air and then land, that's your happy hip position. Okay. If you're not in this position when the return is being struck, there's a good chance you're too far out and now your feet can't work correctly because your hips aren't engaged. You see? So all these people that watch Djokovic and go, oh, I'm going to really spread my feet out. You can't move your feet that way. You can't even engage your legs and your body that way. So you got to find your happy hip spot. And I find a lot of people are too wide and they wonder why they can't move into the ball or drive into the ball. Or even the softer ball comes and their feet are flat like this because they're too far wide. If they're here, they'll go boom, 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 engage. So that's a big one. It's a tip that really helps a lot of people. It helps them on their split step. It helps them on engagement. It helps them on drive forward. Just understanding where their happy hip spot is.
That's all 10. Justin Yo, this has been 10 tips in 10 minutes. Thank you, sir. We'll see you next time.
10 minutes. 10 minutes. Yeah, baby.
Good work.
See you, mate.